One week you're a genius. The next you're throwing darts blindfolded. That maddening inconsistency cost me 4 separate fortunes before I discovered the psychological trap destroying my results. It had nothing to do with my strategy. Trading psychology stick. Today I'm revealing exactly what that trap is and how to break it once and for all. They loved writing about my millions. The newspapers couldn't get enough of it. The coups, the fortunes, the times I broke the bears or rode the bulls to glory. They painted pictures of a man who had conquered the markets, who had figured out what everyone else was still desperately struggling to understand. But here's what they never wrote about, never made it into the headlines or the breathless stories about my latest triumph. They never wrote about the nights I sat alone in my study, completely alone, staring at my trading journal until my eyes burned, trying desperately to understand why I could read the market perfectly for months on end, and then suddenly go completely dark. Sound familiar? That inconsistency nearly destroyed me. And I don't mean just financially, though that was painful enough. I mean something deeper, something that cuts right to the core of who you are as a trader and as a person. It's the feeling of being at the mercy of something you cannot control, cannot predict, cannot master no matter how hard you try. The losses weren't what hurt the most. What truly hurt was not understanding why I lost. I would sit there with years of records spread out before me, meticulous entries documenting every trade I had ever made, and I would search desperately for answers. Was it the market conditions? Was it bad luck? It's some invisible force working against me specifically. And here's what took me decades and multiple fortunes lost to finally understand. The answer to all of those questions was no. The market didn't care about my winning streak. It didn't care that I had just made $50,000 in a single afternoon, or that I had been right 7 consecutive times. The market is not your friend, and it is certainly not your enemy. It simply exists. It moves according to its own laws, its own rhythms, own logic that has absolutely nothing to do with your feelings, your hopes, or your desperate need to prove yourself right. And if you're going to survive in this brutal game, you need to understand something deeply uncomfortable. Your consistency problem isn't about the market at all. It's about you. I learned this lesson the hard way. And I learned it multiple times because I'm stubborn, and because some truths are so uncomfortable that we resist them even when they're staring us directly in the face. You've felt exactly what I'm describing. I know you have because every trader has felt it. Those nights lying awake replaying trades in your mind, moments of crushing doubt when you questioned everything you thought you knew about markets. And right now, sitting there watching this, you probably think a better system will fix everything, a more refined strategy, a secret indicator the successful traders are hiding from you. You're wrong. The solution is far more uncomfortable than that, and by the end of what I'm about to share with you, you're going to understand exactly what it is. After tracking 5,000 of my own trades across 15 years of meticulous record keeping, I discovered something that fundamentally changed how I understood this game. Something that seems completely counterintuitive at first, but once you grasp it, everything suddenly makes sense. My worst enemy wasn't the market. My worst enemy was success itself. I need you to really let that sink in for a moment, because it runs counter to everything you've been taught about trading. Everyone warns. Every book, every course, every mentor tells you to manage your risk, cut your losers quickly, don't let a bad trade turn into a catastrophe. And all of that advice is absolutely correct. Here's what nobody warns you about. Nobody talks about what happens when you win. Winning made me careless. Winning made me overconfident, made me forget that the market can humble anyone at any time, regardless of their track record, their experience, or their supposed genius. Your enemy isn't losing. Enemy is winning. Read that again. Your enemy isn't losing. Your enemy is winning. I went back through my journal, years and years of meticulous records, and the pattern was so clear it was almost embarrassing that I hadn't seen it sooner. I was most disciplined when I was scared, when I was building back from a devastating loss. I had something to prove, and the sting of failure kept me sharp and focused on every detail. I was least disciplined when I was comfortable. I felt like I had finally mastered the game, when success came easily and the money flowed in without requiring much effort on my part. Precisely when I started taking liberties with my rules. That's when I began making small exceptions that seemed harmless. When I convinced myself that maybe I had reached a level of intuition where rigid structure was holding me back from even greater success. Think about your own trading for a moment with complete honesty. When did you make your absolute worst decisions? I guarantee it wasn't after a losing streak when you were being cautious and double-checking everything. It was after a winning streak when when you felt completely invincible, when you thought the rules that had made you successful somehow no longer applied to you, when you looked at a trade that didn't quite meet your criteria and thought to yourself, just this once I'll make an exception, because clearly I understand something the market hasn't shown me yet. That's exactly when the market takes everything back. That's when the slow destruction begins, not with a dramatic crash that teaches you an obvious lesson, with the subtle erosion of the very discipline that made you successful in the first place. I've watched this pattern destroy dozens of traders throughout my career, brilliant people with sharp minds and decades of experience, completely undone not by their failures but by their successes. Let me tell you exactly how traders actually die in this business. And I don't mean literally, though I've known men who ended their own lives after the market destroyed everything they had built. I mean how trading careers end, how dreams die, how fortunes that took years of discipline and patience to build can evaporate into nothing. It doesn't happen the way you probably imagine. Most traders don't blow up in one dramatic crash. They don't lose everything on a single catastrophic bet. That would almost be merciful, because at least then you'd know exactly what happened. You'd have a clear moment to point to and say, everything went wrong. Instead, most traders die slowly, through a death by 1,000 cuts. Each individual cut is small, almost imperceptible. Each one is completely survivable on its own, but together, accumulated over time, they drain the life out of your account and your confidence and your very identity as a trader. Sound familiar? I lost my fortune exactly this way, not in one catastrophic trade, but through a long series of small violations of the principles that had made me successful. It started so innocently that I didn't even recognize what was happening. A position slightly too large here, not dramatically oversized, just a bit bigger than my rules allowed because I felt particularly confident about this specific setup. A loss held slightly too long there, not forever, just a bit past my predetermined stop, because I was absolutely convinced the stock would come back if I just gave it a little more room to breathe. Trade taken without my usual confirming signals, just on a gut feeling, because my instincts were telling me something my system couldn't quite capture. Small violations of my discipline didn't hurt me immediately, and that was precisely the problem. In fact, several of them worked out quite well, only reinforced my growing belief that maybe I was beyond my own rules now. Maybe my years of experience had given me a sixth sense that transcended systematic trading. Maybe the rigid rules that helped me when I was learning were now actually holding me back from even greater success. Each successful violation made the next one easier to justify. Each time I bent the rules and got away with it, I bent them a little further the next time. The degradation was so gradual that I didn't even notice it happening. Time I finally recognized the pattern, the damage was already done. Small violations lead to occasional rewards. Occasional rewards lead to gradual erosion of standards. Gradual erosion leads to complete catastrophe, not with a dramatic bang that teaches you an obvious lesson. With a quiet whimper you don't even hear until everything is gone. Have you noticed this pattern in your own trading? That drift away from what you know works? Before I give you the solution, I need to tell you about the darkest moment of my entire trading career, because you absolutely need to understand what's really at stake here. It was 1934. Lost everything, again. And when I say everything, I mean everything. I was completely broke. I was deeply in debt to people I couldn't face. Creditors were calling at all hours demanding money I didn't have. I had a family depending on me and absolutely nothing to provide for them. But worse than all of that financial devastation, than the shame and the fear and the desperate scrambling, was that I had lost my confidence. I had lost my fundamental belief in myself as a trader. I sat alone in a small room, just staring at the wall for hours on end, not even really looking at the wall, staring at nothing, completely lost in my thoughts. I'm not ashamed to admit there were moments in that room when I considered much darker options. The weight of failure pressed down so heavily I genuinely didn't know if I could carry it another day. If you've ever been in that place, you understand exactly what I'm describing. That hopelessness when something you've built your entire identity around crumbles into dust. But then, somewhere in that darkness, I remembered something crucial. I remembered the fundamental principles that had made me successful in the first place. I remembered that those principles hadn't changed. The market hadn't changed in any meaningful way. The laws of supply and demand that governed prices in 1890 were the exact same laws governing prices in 1934. The only thing that changed, the only variable that differed between my successes and my failures, was whether I followed those principles consistently or not. When I followed them faithfully, I made money. When I abandoned them, I lost everything. It was that brutally simple. So I made a decision in that dark room that saved my life in every sense of the word. I would never, ever break my rules again, no matter what. No matter how confident I felt about any particular trade, no matter how much pressure I faced to make money quickly. The rules were the rules, absolutely inviolable, and that single decision changed everything that followed. The solution is brutal in its simplicity and absolutely excruciating in its execution. Think about the difference between a sniper and a soldier spraying bullets from a machine gun. The soldier with the machine gun is constantly active. He creates tremendous noise, creating the appearance of doing something important, burning through ammunition at a furious rate. It feels like progress, but his actual hit rate is terrible, and he's constantly vulnerable because he's drawing attention to his position. The sniper operates completely differently. He waits. He calculates wind and distance and elevation with excruciating precision. He controls his breathing and his heartbeat. He ignores every distraction around him. He might hold his position for hours or even days without taking a single shot. To an outside observer, he appears to be doing absolutely nothing productive. When he finally decides the moment is right and pulls the trigger, he does not miss. That contrast perfectly captures what disciplined trading looks like versus what most traders actually do. You have to build a system, and then you have to follow it with religious devotion especially when everything inside you is screaming to do something different. You have to follow it when you're winning and feeling completely invincible. You have to follow it when you're losing and feeling like the system must be broken. You have to follow it when you see what looks like the opportunity of a lifetime that doesn't quite meet your entry criteria. You have to follow it when you're scared, and when you're greedy, and when you're bored, and when you're excited. You have to follow it until following it becomes more natural than breathing itself. That might sound painfully obvious. You might be thinking to yourself, of course I need to follow my system. The most basic advice possible. Tell me something I don't already know. But here's what shocked me most after decades of observing traders succeed and fail. The specific system itself almost doesn't matter. I've watched traders make consistent money with dozens of completely different approaches. Trend followers who only buy stocks making new all-time highs. Mean reversion traders who exclusively buy stocks that have been beaten down to extreme levels. Fundamental analysts who study balance sheets and earnings projections and ignore price action entirely. Pure tape readers who care about nothing except price and volume in real time. Specific methodology you choose matters far less than the consistency with which you apply it. A small edge, consistently applied over hundreds or thousands of trades, compounds into something genuinely significant over time. But that compounding only works if you execute your approach the exact same way every single time. If you vary your approach based on your current emotions or your recent results or your confidence level in any particular trade, you completely destroy the mathematical advantage that makes systematic trading profitable over time. Stop searching for the perfect system. There isn't one. Every system ever created has drawdowns. Every system has extended periods where it underperforms. Every system produces individual trades that look obviously wrong in hindsight. Separates the traders who build lasting fortunes from the traders who blow up their accounts isn't the specific system they use. Their ability to execute whatever system they've chosen with absolutely unwavering discipline, regardless of how they feel about any particular trade or any particular period. If you want to know how I stopped my enemies from using my own psychology against me, subscribe now, because I'm about to reveal the 1907 mistake that cost me millions. Mastering your own psychology is essential, but it's not sufficient by itself. You also have to protect yourself from the psychology of everyone else in the market. The market is not your friend. The market is not your therapist. The market is not your drinking buddy who will keep your secrets safe out of loyalty. The market is a battlefield, and every single word you speak about your positions is intelligence that your enemies can and will use against you. Most traders don't lose because they lack skill or knowledge. They lose because they talk far too much. They reveal their positions, their plans, and their dreams to anyone who will listen. And by doing so, they hand their edge directly to the very market that will use it to destroy them. I learned this lesson the hard way in 1907. I was building a massive short position before what I knew would be a devastating market panic. I had been accumulating my position quietly, methodically, following the tape like a bloodhound following a scent. Nobody knew what I was doing. Nobody suspected. And that complete secrecy was a critical part of my edge. One evening at a dinner party, after a few drinks had loosened my tongue, I mentioned my position to a fellow trader. Just a casual comment, nothing too specific. just enough for him to understand I was heavily short and expecting a significant move downward. Within days, I noticed something deeply troubling. Every single time I tried to add to my short position, the price would mysteriously firm up. The market would strengthen just enough to make my entry point more expensive, weaken again immediately after I had established my position. Someone was watching my every move. Someone knew exactly what I was trying to do. Casual dinner comment had traveled through the trading community faster than I could have possibly imagined. And now, my competitors had intelligence they could use against me. They knew I was short. They knew I wanted to add size. So they played games with the price, making my life as difficult as possible, eating into my profits, testing my resolve. Have you ever had a trade move against you immediately after you told someone about it? That's not coincidence. That's the market exploiting the information you freely gave away. Think about every successful trading method as being exactly like a secret fishing spot. When you're the only person who knows where the fish are biting, you eat extremely well. You show up, you cast your line, you catch dinner effortlessly. Simple and reliable. But tell 10 people about your secret spot, and suddenly it becomes crowded. Fish get nervous with all the additional activity. The competition for every catch increases dramatically. Your edge begins to disappear because too many people are trying to exploit the same opportunity. Tell 100 people about your spot, and the fish vanish entirely. The location that once made you successful becomes completely worthless because too many people are aware of it. The market works in exactly the same way. Every strategy, every pattern, every edge that exists only works because not everyone knows about it yet. The moment any approach becomes common knowledge, the market adapts around it. Other traders run the setup. Algorithms detect the pattern and exploit it before you can. The easy money disappears overnight. Your edge becomes everyone's edge, which effectively means it becomes nobody's edge at all. This is precisely why the most successful traders I've ever encountered throughout my long career are invariably the quiet ones. They don't post their trades on social media seeking validation. They don't brag about their wins at dinner parties to impress people. They don't share their specific strategies with other traders, no matter how friendly those traders might appear. They understand at a deep level that trading is a zero-sum game. Your profit comes directly from someone else's loss. And you don't arm your opponents with your own weapons. There are specific things you absolutely must guard with your life if you want to survive and thrive in this business. First, never reveal your current positions to anyone. You tell people what you're holding. You're not just making innocent conversation. You're creating counterforces that will work against you. If you're long a stock and everyone knows it, guess what happens the instant that stock shows even the slightest weakness? They push it down harder, knowing with certainty that you'll eventually have to sell. They can calculate exactly where your pain threshold is likely to be and drive the price right to that level. If your short and word gets around, the big players will squeeze you mercilessly, drive the price up specifically to force you out of your position at a devastating loss. They know precisely where your pain point is because you told them. Your position is your private war, and the moment you make it public, you've invited the enemy directly into your strategy session. Second, never reveal your profits or losses to anyone. Might seem completely harmless, but it's actually incredibly dangerous to your success. When you talk about your wins, you attract parasites like blood in the water attracts sharks. Suddenly everyone wants to be your close friend. Everyone has a special deal just for you. Everyone wants you to invest in their idea or needs a short-term loan or has information to share. Your focus shifts completely from making money to managing these relationships. From hunting opportunities to defending against people who want something from you. Worse still, you create intense psychological pressure on yourself. Once people know you're up significantly, they watch you closely. They wait eagerly for you to fail, and you start trading to maintain your public image rather than following what the market is actually telling you. You make reckless bets to prove you're still as sharp as everyone believes. You hold losing positions too long because you simply cannot bear the thought of people watching you take a loss. On the flip side, never reveal your losses either. People know you're hurting. They can smell vulnerability. The sharks begin circling immediately. They push harder in whatever direction is already causing you pain. Squeeze every last dollar out of your suffering because they know exactly how exposed you are. Third, and perhaps most importantly, never reveal your conviction level about any trade. Might be the most subtle point, but also the most critical. When you have extremely high conviction about a trade, keep that fire burning intensely in your chest. Ice water flow through your veins when discussing it with anyone else. Never telegraph your certainty. I once had absolute conviction that a particular stock was going to collapse. Everything in my analysis lined up perfectly. I could see it as clearly as I've ever seen anything in the markets. But instead of keeping quiet and executing my plan in silence, I expressed my conviction at a dinner with several prominent traders. I told them with complete confidence that this stock was going to zero. What happened next? Two of those traders immediately took the other side of my position. Not because they genuinely disagreed with my analysis. They did it specifically and deliberately because they knew I was so completely convinced. They figured if I was that certain, they could squeeze me out before the move happened. That stock up relentlessly for 2 full weeks, running my stops, creating false breakouts, doing everything possible to make me doubt my conviction. I had simply kept my mouth shut. They would have had no reason whatsoever to target that particular position. But my careless words painted a bright target directly on my back. After my biggest score in 1929, when I shorted the catastrophic market crash and made over $100 million while everyone else was being destroyed, Mame appeared in every newspaper in the country. Jesse Livermore, the man who made an unimaginable fortune while the rest of the world burned. It sounds glorious, doesn't it? The ultimate vindication. Absolute proof that I really was as good as I had always believed myself to be. But that publicity very nearly destroyed me completely. Every single trade I made after that became public knowledge and subject to intense scrutiny. Every position I took was analyzed and debated by thousands of armchair speculators who had never risked a single dollar of their own money in their entire lives. When I won, they dismissed it as luck. When I lost, they gleefully proclaimed I had finally lost my edge. The constant pressure became absolutely unbearable. I found myself making decisions based on what people expected of me rather than what the tape was actually telling me. I'd hesitate to take positions that might look foolish if they went wrong, even when my analysis was sound. I'd hold losing positions far too long because I couldn't stomach admitting a mistake publicly. I had started trading for external validation instead of trading for market truth. And when you trade for external validation instead of market truth, you are completely finished in this business. The market doesn't care about your reputation. It doesn't care what the newspapers print or what other traders whisper about you. It only rewards those who see what is actually happening and have the courage to act on that vision, regardless of how it might appear to outside observers. The greatest traders I've ever known throughout my entire career were invariably the quiet ones, not the loudest voices in the brokerage house, the ones constantly offering opinions and predictions to anyone who would listen. The truly great ones sat quietly in the corner, studying the tape with complete focus, keeping their thoughts entirely to themselves. They entered positions without any fanfare whatsoever and exited without offering any explanation. They built fortunes in complete silence while others built only excuses. They understood instinctively that in trading, exactly as in poker, the player who controls their expression completely controls the game itself. Let me show you exactly what real patience actually looks like in practice, because most traders have no conception of the patience this business truly requires. There was a period in my career where I didn't make a single significant trade for months. Not days, weeks. Months of sitting on the sidelines doing absolutely nothing while the market moved and opportunities appeared to others. My friends became convinced I had completely lost my nerve. They would see me at the club and ask with barely concealed concern whether I had finally given up on speculation entirely. Some of them started treating me differently, as if my long inactivity was evidence of some fundamental failure of will or insight, but I hadn't lost my nerve, not even slightly. I simply recognized that the market conditions weren't suitable for my particular approach, so I did nothing. I sat on my hands. I watched the tape every single day. I studied the movements of prices and the behavior of stocks. I prepared meticulously for the moment when conditions would shift. But I did not trade. This drove me absolutely crazy at first. It felt like I was missing opportunities that would never, because consistent execution of a sound system is the only reliable path to long-term success in this business. Everything else is noise and distraction. In the comments below, I want you to tell me the one rule you break most often. Not 3 rules. Not a comprehensive list of everything you struggle with. Just one single rule. The specific rule that costs you the most money and causes you the most pain. Because identifying it is the first step to fixing it. When you write it down, you admit it publicly, and specifically, something changes in your brain. It stops being a vague problem you'll deal with someday. It becomes real and concrete, and something you can actually work on starting today. Whatever rule you just thought of, whatever weakness you're reluctant to admit even to yourself, Understand this. You're breaking that rule repeatedly because you don't know when to sit completely out of the market. You lack a clear framework for distinguishing between times when you should trade and times when you should wait. So watch this next video, where I break down exactly when to stay completely on the sidelines. The specific warning signs that tell you today is not your day. The clear signals that separate genuine profitable opportunities from traps designed to take your money. That psychological trap I mentioned at the very beginning of this video. It's the version of you that shows up after a winning streak. Master that version, learn to recognize when it's taking control of your decisions, and you'll master this entire game. In this business, you don't get what you deserve, you don't get what you hope for or what you need or what would be fair. You get what you consistently execute. Nothing more and nothing less. The market is utterly indifferent to your intentions, your feelings, your circumstances. It cares only about your actions. So make those actions count, every single one of them.